Hello again guys, welcome back to the channel. Comic Kid here again, and today we are going to be talking about the state of DC Future State. Now, this video will just be kind of like a general review, synopsis of Future State, and so on and so forth, stuff like that. But we'll go ahead and just jump right in. Now, for those of you who might be unfamiliar with Future State or have heard about it but not really read anything, following the events of Dark Knight's Death Metal from Scott Snyder, which was one of DC's big events of last year, readers are then given a glimpse into the future state, quotey fingers, of the DC universe. Now, when this was first announced, there were rumors that they were going to call it DC 5G, and there were rumors that this was supposed to be the main status quo for the DC universe, at least for a while, but that ended up not being the case. It was just a 2-month long event that kind of mirrored the Future's End one that they did a few years back, which involved Batman Beyond and a bunch of other craziness with the timeline and stuff like that. Now, unlike Future's End, which is no longer canon, that timeline has effectively been erased from continuity because of the actions within that timeline. But that one was set about 5 years into the DC future, which I guess would be about close to where it is now when that storyline came out. But Future State is set around 10 years into the DC future from where we left off with Metal. Now, that is just an approximation. There are actually a few Future State titles that kind of jump around, even though they're all in one continuity, they're not in the same time frame. You do get 2 different versions of Nightwing, one in the Nightwing series and one in the Teen Titans series. And then you do see different versions of Jonathan Kent and Yara Flor through the Justice League titles, their own respective titles, and then the Superman and Wonder Woman titles. Now, I will say that fortunately, unlike Future's End, Future State does not feel gimmicky in any way. When Future's End came out, all monthly titles were suspended for 1 month to focus on the release of one single Future's End title. And while it was gimmicky, some of them were good, most of them were just kind of meh, but they didn't really have any form of lasting impact beyond just the one-shot issues. And they never really went anywhere. So fortunately for Future State, it at least has a point beyond just what Future's End alone had. And we already know that certain characters in Future State are gonna show up within the next few months, especially characters like Yara Flor and Red X and the new Flash. And so there will be lasting effects from Future State. We don't know exactly how much they'll pull from this timeline at the moment, but we know there will be ramifications and that we'll see certain characters again and so on and so forth. Now, as far as the timeline itself is concerned going forward, I really don't think that the next several years of DC content will set up to make this exact same timeline. I think they'll probably do another, earth-shattering, mind-blowing event that will kind of reset the timeline before the present day versions of these characters can get that far in the Future State timeline. Obviously, certain seeds that they've planted in Future State will develop in the present, and so the present timeline will get to Future State to some degree, but I don't think it's going to take 10 years or anything like that for them to get so far. Now, as far as the general review of Future State, I've already kind of explained this, but I really thought it was a pretty strong sort of event. And even though none of the other titles came out this month, unless it was a spin-off series, so stories like Rorschach and anything Black Label came out like normal, but all my DC cravings for each week were sated by whatever came out Future State supplies. And I definitely tried a bunch of titles that I wasn't currently reading. Like, I myself don't pick up Wonder Woman on a weekly basis, but I read both Wonder Woman titles for Future State just because I was curious. Same with Suicide Squad. Like, I hadn't read a monthly Suicide Squad book in a long time, basically since Rebirth had started. Typically I trade wait for it, but I did read the Future State Suicide Squads, and so they definitely got me started on titles that maybe just read the number ones for and then trade wait from there. But I was very pleasantly surprised by some of these titles. Now, I am glad it didn't last longer than 2 months. I do think they probably could have gone through March if they had really wanted to, but I feel like 2 months was an appropriate amount of time. I feel like they told all the stories they needed to be told and planted the appropriate number of seeds to go forward. But I did want to highlight some of my favorite titles, and I never thought I'd say some of these particular titles would be my favorite titles, just because as much as I might love the characters, they're not the types of stories that I'm normally just drawn to. But I felt like Aquaman especially was incredible. I thought it was really interesting to see Jackson Hyde in this situation, as well as Andy Curry, and I loved the whole dynamic between the two, and I love the whole, in 2 issues alone, I would say this is easily one of the best Aquaman stories. Like, it was so good. And I also felt like Catwoman was actually a really strong story as well. I'll probably run through my top 5 Future State titles here in alphabetical order, but Catwoman was also great. You really kind of get to see her be the hero in this, and so the way she's kind of grown as a character both with and without Bruce since she started out, I thought these 2 issues especially just offered a really interesting look at Selena Kyle overall. So I would definitely recommend that one as well. I was also really surprised by Harley Quinn. Stephanie Phillips wrote the Future State ones, and she will be writing the new Harley Quinn ongoing number 1 that's set for March. And I gotta say, she is off to an incredibly strong start. The Joker Harley series over at Black Label is doing this kind of retelling of Harley's origin where she's a profiler for the GCPD instead of a psychiatrist. And I thought that was a really interesting story, and so you kind of see some elements of that in Stephanie Phillips' Future State Harley Quinn as well. Effectively, Scarecrow needs Harley to profile Black Mask so that they can kind of predict his moves and stop him. And where I think Phillips really succeeds is that she captures this smarter element to Harley. I definitely felt as though she got Harley's voice down wonderfully, but you also see that, yes, Harley is really smart. She is a doctor, and so a lot of other writers kind of tend to forget that just in the goofy nature of her character, but I really like how Phillips really honed in on that element of Harley as a character. And then, as much as I know people were super excited to see Yara Flor as Wonder Woman, I actually thought Immortal Wonder Woman by Becky Cloonan was the stronger of the 2 stories. Don't get me wrong, I really am intrigued by Yara Flor and I'm super excited to see more of her. Incredibly strong start, but I did feel as though Immortal Wonder Woman was just one of the standout Future State titles in terms of overall quality. Now, for as powerful as people realize Diana is, it seems like DC never quite explores that element to her as often. And so to avoid spoilers, seeing her in this situation, and at the end in the conversation she has with Spectre, it's just a really, really interesting look at Diana, I thought. And I really enjoyed how almost all of these stories had a nice conclusive ending, even if stuff was set up to continue, there is a bit of closure in each of them. And I feel like in just 2 issues, Becky Cloonan tells an incredibly strong Wonder Woman story that we've never really seen before. I feel like especially recently authors have tended to focus on her origin, and you get a bunch of retellings of Diana's origin, especially within the past like 4 to 5 years alone. But I mean, obviously it's future state. Becky Cloonan is focusing on the end of Diana's life and stuff like that, and so it's just an incredibly interesting look at the character, I thought. And so given what Becky Cloonan has done in 2 issues alone, like, I gotta say, I'm pretty excited for her Wonder Woman run. I might add it to my pull list. I might pick it up on a weekly, monthly basis, however often it comes out. But I definitely am excited to see what Cloonan has in store. And now the last one that I want to talk about is Superman Worlds of War. This one's by Philip Kennedy Johnson, who will be taking up both Action Comics and Superman. And I had never really read anything by Johnson beforehand. I know he's the author of Last God, which I've only heard great things about, but I haven't given it a shot myself, and so this was really my first thing by him that I've read. But I gotta say, I was absolutely sold with Johnson on the first page. Like, I am super excited to see what he does with Clark going forward, and I feel like the dude just gets Superman. And I didn't think Bendis like misunderstood Superman. I just felt like he never really did anything with Superman as a character. But in 2 issues alone, Johnson definitely expresses a great and full understanding of the character, at least in my opinion. And so I am just absolutely stoked for what he has coming. Now, I do say 2 issues. Technically, all the Superman titles kind of culminate into the Superman House of L, but you don't really need that one if you don't want to. It's still great, and it is still important. There are valuable story elements in that, but if you just wanted to read the 2 Worlds of War ones, then you could do that as well. But those are my top 5 future state titles. And don't get me wrong, like, I was very, very impressed by everything else. I thought Justice League, Robin, Superman vs. Lex, like, there were not really any that I disliked. And so yeah, just all around, I was very impressed with how Future State turned out, and I would highly, highly encourage you guys to check it out as well. Now, at the moment, I'm not quite sure how they're going to collect it. I imagine they'll kind of bundle all the Bat titles together, all the Superman titles together, and kind of so on, but that would still leave for some pretty thick graphic novels. So we'll kind of see how things play out. Now, there are also backup stories focusing on other characters in Future State as well. Not every title you grab will have a backup story, but quite a few of them do, and most of them are pretty good. I remember really liking the Outsiders one, which I believe was in the back of Next Batman. But they have announced that this particular version of Red Hood will be getting a ongoing title as well from, I believe, Joshua Williamson. I could be wrong there. But it doesn't quite look like they'll be bringing Red Hood back in the present. They're just going to continue with the Future State storyline. And so yeah, there's another thing continuing from Future State. But overall, I did enjoy it. I'd encourage you guys to check it out. Definitely not going to be a waste of time or money as much as it might seem like it. But that's everything that I have for you guys today. Thank y'all so much for watching. Be sure to hit like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again real soon.